Good afternoon, everybody. Lorraine from the NEP here, hosting today's webinar. We'd originally advertised this session as being Forms, Task and Planner. But when we spoke to our guest today from Force, from West Yorkshire Police, he had so many great things to tell us about forms and how he's using Power Automate. We decided to make this session exclusively around that. So we will be doing Tasks and Planner next week. And if you take a look in the Q&A shortly, the link to that will appear. This session is, of course, just 30 minutes long and it is recorded. So if you want to watch it back at any stage, or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, you'll find it available on our website later today. So let me introduce today's guests to you. Two of our guests. Firstly, let me introduce Nick, our resident expert from Microsoft. Hi there, Nick. Nice to see you today.
Hello, Lorraine.
And also from West Yorkshire Police, we have PC Luke Ferrand, who is going to be showing us some fantastic examples of how you can use Forms and Power Automate. But we're going to start off with Nick. Hi, Luke. We're going to start off with Nick, though. And Nick, you're going to take us through the very basics before we start getting into some of that detail of how you can use Forms. So over to you, Nick, to get us going.
Thank you, Lorraine. Great to be here again. Okay, hopefully you'll see my screen that I've just shared. So I'm just going to create a very simple form today. Okay, I'm in office.com. And what you can see here is you have the ability to create a new form. So you click on new form. I've actually got some content, just because the interest of the time today, I've actually got some content that I can copy and paste from another form that I've created. So I'm not very whizzy at typing, so you'll just see some copy and paste. So what I'm going to do is create a quick form just around a welfare survey for COVID-19. So when we talk about forms and the police, today, you may use Excel, you may use SurveyMonkey for any of your sort of benefit tracker. Going forward, you could use Microsoft Forms. So they're quite straightforward to use. There's not a huge amount of functionality. So the first thing you do is give your form a nice little logical name, and you can give your form a nice little description for your audience so they know what they're completing this form for. Let me just copy that in there. Oops. Paste it in there. There you go. And when you create a form, you've got several options here. You can click on the new item box and you have a choice here to a multiple choice question, a text question, a rating and a date. And I'm just going to choose, first of all, a multiple choice question. So first of all, it asks you what is the question that you want to ask your audience. Again, I'm just do some copy and paste in, just the interest of time here. And it gives me straight away some options. It knows it's asked a question. So this sort of the intelligence side of this is asking me, do you want to use yes, no, maybe, or actually, do you want to specify what do you want those answers to be? Now, in this case, for this COVID survey, I'm actually going to ask some specific or have some specific answers here. So I'm just copying and pasting these in just from a document I've already got here. And what you can do, it always defaults you to have two answers to that particular question. You can add a further option. So add option, and I can still continue to do this. So that's going to be no. And then the add option here is going to be unsure. So it's a nice little question there about if you think you've had COVID or not. Now, if I just click away from that, you can see straight away, it's a nice little view of my question. I'm just going to add a few more just so that you can actually see how to sort of build these questions out. I'm just going to add another one. It's going to be another multiple choice. And I'm just going to copy a few more in just so you can see sort of the power of these forms and how easy they are to create. Something you also can create in forms is something called branching. So, sometimes when you have a questionnaire and it says, if the answer is yes or if the answer is no, and you choose yes, sometimes the people that are actually creating that form just wants a little bit more of information from you about why you've made that choice within that question. And you have branching within Microsoft Forms as well. So let me just finish off creating this form very quickly. The next little add a question. I'm going to actually choose a rating just to show you what the difference is within a rating. So I'm just going to pop my little question in here. So rate the question 1 to 5 and just I'm going to leave the stars there. Okay, and I'm just going to click on add again to add a new one. And I've got a choice again, multiple choice text and so forth. I'm just going to do a few more. I'm just going to show you a date one as well, what the date one looks like. So this question, the next question is around what was your date of your last COVID test? So I want a date type of question. And if I click on date, I could pop the question in there. And then what the audience gets, the person that's actually completing the form, is a little canvas they can click on a date. It's quite handy if you're trying to obtain dates from your user base. Okay, let me just do a few more just to add these in. I'm going to do another multiple choice. Multiple choice is a very common one to use. And in this case, with this question here, how do you feel you've got the equipment needed to protect yourself? It is just a yes or no or maybe. So again, I can just use those default settings within forms for me to make my life a little bit easier. Now, this is where I'm going to use a little branching question. Now, it doesn't really matter when you're creating your form whereabouts you place your questions, because you have the ability to move these questions around, and I'll show you. So I'm just going to add my little final question, and it's actually going to be a text box. I'm just going to ask the question. If you've answered, you've answered no to a particular question, we'd appreciate a little bit more feedback from you. Now, what you can do when you actually create that question, if you wanted to, in your questions here, you can move them about. So say, for example, with question 6, maybe I just want that a little bit further up in my questions. You see there, it's moved now to question 4. Now, when we talk about branching, what we can do, say, for example, this question here, question 5, it was actually question 5 originally. If you want to add branching, what you could do is if you actually click on your question here that you've asked, and it could be any of your questions, you can use the little 3 dots in forms, and 3 dots in 365 always means more options. There's always a good place to go. If you click on those three little dots, hopefully you can see at the bottom of my screen, you can see add branching. And then I have the ability to go through my questions and actually have the ability to potentially pop that audience over to a question to obtain more information. So first of all, it's the question I've got here, do you think you've had COVID or not? Yes, to confirm. I could, if I wanted to, jump into another question. So say, for example, the question is yes, you've had a positive test. What I could do as a branch is say, what was the date of your last COVID? Okay, simple as that. I'm just going to jump out of that second because very quickly just to show you what branching looks like. I'm just going to click on back. And what you can do, and I'm just going to, what you can do here is I'm going to show you what it looks like from the audience point of view. So somebody that actually received this particular form. There's a couple of things you can do before you do that to sort of pretty it up. And what you can do is just use the theme icon. And within theme, if you wanted to, you could change the theme of the colour. So maybe perhaps with your force, you want to use this sort of pinky red, you might want to use blue. You do have the ability to use one of the Microsoft backgrounds. But also what you can do, so if you wanted to, you can add a specific image that's particularly relevant to this form, or maybe that's relevant to your force. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to use Bing. Now, you might find with your force, you might not necessarily want to pull images from Bing. You may want to use specific images that maybe your communication area have actually sort of vetted that you're allowed to use within your force. You can see here I've got some pictures from Bing with regards to COVID. So I'm just going to choose that one just to show you how straightforward that one is. And it would just pop in the background in a second. There's a delay when you're demonstrating. Okay, you can see it pop in the background. You have a little preview, so you can see here what this looks like, what this form looks like on a computer, and you can click on here what it looks like on a mobile device as well. So you can just sense check it to make sure that it's appropriate and it's within your design as well. And then what you can do when you're ready to share is if you click on that little share button, you have the ability here to share with anyone. What that button means there, that if you wanted to share this form outside of your force, maybe you want to share it with your communities, you could click on anyone can respond. So it doesn't have to be force specific. I'm going to leave it just as default, anybody in my organisation. I have the ability here, if I wanted to share a link, I could do a QR code. That's also very handy if you're communicating it with QR codes. I could also use this button here, which gives me an embed link. Maybe I want to embed it into an intranet page, or maybe a Sway document or something. Or if I wanted to, I could actually just link it into email. At that point, it would actually just pop it into an email already for me to send. So nice and straightforward. I'm just going to use that little link here to copy. because now I've copied it, I'm just going to pop it into my browser to show you what the experience is from that end user, the person that's actually received that share link from you. You can see here, I haven't got all the tabs that I had before. When I was editing it, I was the owner of this form. You can see I've got a responses tab here. But as the user completing this form, you can see that I complete it here. I am going to actually click on yes at this particular question, because remember I had a branching question, didn't I? If I click on yes, then the question around branching pops up. And if I wanted to, I can put a date of when I actually had that COVID test. And then I can continue then with my survey along the way, and I can submit it. You can configure this final page, this thanks page, and the way that you do that is when you create your form, you can again use the 3 dots, always means more options. If you click on the 3 dots here, you've got settings. And within the settings here, you can customize your thank you message. So you can make it a little bit more personal to your force or your audience. There's other options here that you can use. If you wanted a start date or an end date of your form, that's quite important sometimes. Rather than sort of drifting on to the end of time, you can have an end date to that form. And you can record people's names if you wanted to, or you could have it anonymous. Now, once somebody's actually completed a form, you'll see here, because I'm the owner of this form, I can see the responses. And it tells me a nice little graphic interface here of what those responses were. If I wanted to, I could click on results. And I can, because I've set it so I want to record the names, I can then start flicking through the results if I wanted to. If I wanted to, I could click on Open in Excel, and it would just pop the information into Excel. Let's pop it over here for you to, it's going to pop it over here. There you go. For you to be able maybe to manipulate that data in a better way than what you can in forms. Okay, I think that's everything from forms. Luke, did you want to show us what you've been up to?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. As introduced, I'm Luke Farron from West Yorkshire Police. I've got the dubious responsibility for lots of different forms and different practices in West Yorkshire Police, gaining information and lots of interesting ways of developing new stuff. So this came under our remit for Office 365, but it dovetails nicely with my other work with mobile and body-worn video and things like that. So this is about our use cases, about how we're using it for, what we're using forms for. I've broken it down into several categories for you. As you saw there from Nick, surveys is one thing we have used it for. We've used it for our self-assigned, self-deploy to get our get feedback from our officers on that, but also reporting tools. So things like Taser review, Firearms debrief forms. Those are all now Microsoft Forms rather than any other method that we used to use in the past. We have input method, which is probably one of the most interesting ones that I think we've come up with, which I'm going to go into more depth later. I've got an example for you of how the input method works. And knowledge checks. So actually, an example of this is we have biometric fingerprint scanners in force. We need to train people using that. So we've got a sway presentation that shows them how to use the device and when they should and shouldn't use them. And embedded into that is a Microsoft form, which is a knowledge check. There's then some automation in the background, which lets us know who's passed that. I'm going to show you how that automation works as well. And then finally, self-service tools is something that I'm just playing with at the moment. As you saw from Nick, the branching is quite useful when you can actually, you know what the answer is, and you can move on to a different question depending on which one they choose. So you can use it for self-service tools. We've got some issues with our VPN at the moment, so I'm using that to diagnose the problem and then offer solutions, and then there's some automations in the background, sending emails and things. So, yep, I'm just going to take you through one of those examples, which is the input method, because it's quite interesting. So we're using it as an input method to interact with, if you like, a computer system. The computer system is just a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, but I want people to put information in and get information out of it, but in a more graphical way, and that's what I'm using forms for. So the example is a booking system for replacement devices. We've got approximately 6,000 users of mobile devices in force, and sometimes we need to replace their device. So we're just going through a replacement of approximately 1,000 of those, and we need some way of them booking in a slot to get that device switched. So we've used forms for that. So what we've done is we sent this email, don't worry, you don't have to read it. It's just an email about how they've been identified as a person that needs a new device. The new user agreement is attached for the new device. They need to read that because they're going to be asked to confirm it. Asks them to click on this link, which will let them book in. So there's a little linky there. They click that, and that takes them to a Microsoft form. So which is this form just here. Comes to appointment booking. And they've got two options, email me the dates, or I have just received the dates and want to book. So if you click email me the dates and click submit, that's exactly what it does. There's some automation which I'm going to show you in the background, which will send them the available dates. So that comes back looking like this, a little email from our mailbox with using their own name, the person it's being sent to, with the dates that's available for them. They choose one of those dates and they have a couple of links. Use either one to click it and sends them back to the form again. So the same form. I could have done a different form, but just for sake of ease for myself, I chose the exact same form. So using that branching, now when I click, I have just received the dates and want to book, that branching appears and says, this is the next question for that then. So can you confirm that you've read and understood the user agreement? You click yes, and it's asked you to choose your date. So within forms, you can't customize what dates have been shown, so it shows you all dates in the calendar there, but you've got the email which tells you which dates are available. So you choose one of those, and that goes off and says complete, I'm happy. The officer, a few seconds later then, will receive another email back saying, this is your device appointment, as in the subject line, the date of the appointment, the fact that the appointment is booked for that date, the location where that collection is, and what times they need to attend in between. Tells them that they can do the process again if they need to rebook. Some information about the staff that are working there, a little bit about COVID, and some instructions on what they need to bring with them. Also attached is their user guide for their new phone. Makes it so much easier, so we don't have to teach them how to use it. They just get the user guide sent when they book. A second email also they'll receive almost instantaneously, which is this one here, which is a copy of their signed user agreement with their name nicely put into the title, and it's a thanks for confirming, and it's been sent to HR for inclusion in your file. It's not actually a forwarded email. They get this as an email. What actually happens is this is just one page of it. This actual agreement PDF gets put in a file location, so it can be searched later by HR, all automated, no one has to do anything, which is really useful unless we need that agreement, in which case we can go look in that file location and find it. It populates that file, so that actual PDF has been populated with the officer's rank, their name, their team, their district, and the date and time they signed it and what they've confirmed it via. So it's actually their email address there, because obviously that's authenticated by AD. So we take that as a signature because you have to log in using that person. So a little bit of how that works. It looks very simple, looks very easy, looks very professional and all that sort of stuff, which is really good. So that was the form, that was the interaction. There was 3 questions in it, very, very simple. The way I like to see this is we make it simple for them and more complicated for us. So this is the automation. So we're switched over now into Power Automate, and this is a flow chart. This is how you build it. You drag and drop these little elements into it. And you choose what it's going to do and what happens next. You can choose Power Automate to be triggered by anything. Well, not anything, but certain things like the time of day. Maybe it may trigger once a week at this particular time. But this trigger is when a new response is submitted. So I've identified a form, so the appointment booking form. So when a new response is submitted into that form, it runs this. And I've configured this one to run one at a time. You can run multiples at the same time. But because this is interacting with a particular spreadsheet, I don't want multiple flows running at the same time to interact with the same spreadsheet, because it might give people the wrong answer. So we've got, when the response is submitted, it gets the response details. That's literally getting all the questions out of that form. It's getting the user profile of the person who submitted that. So I'm literally looking into their Microsoft account and bringing out all their information. So I now know who they are, where they work, what the team is, all that sort of good stuff that I need to know later. I get a row from a particular spreadsheet. That's I've got a list of people who should be getting a new device. So it looks for their row in that spreadsheet. If it doesn't find them, it comes down the left-hand branch. If it does find them, it goes down the right-hand branch. The left-hand branch is for people who are trying to get a new form where they've not been invited, which it does happen quite a lot. So that adds a row to that same spreadsheet just to say this person tried. Sometimes we get people's details wrong and it's a genuine one where we have invited them, but the system couldn't find them. So it comes down here and adds a row to the table, so we can keep an eye on that to make sure that people are getting the forms that they need. And then it sends sends one of two emails. If that succeeds, it adds a row to a table. You can tell it's not succeeded by this little red dotted line. So if it succeeds, it comes down this side and it sends this email. So it's very simple. It looks like a normal email. You just literally put in where you want it to come from, where you want it to go to, and write the email. But then you can use dynamic stuff like the given name from their Microsoft account. So I'm actually putting in dynamic stuff in here, so it will actually call them by their name and say it's not possible to find you in that list. If you received it from us, then please reply, and that just comes back to our mailbox then, so we can sort that problem out for them. If it doesn't find them again in there, if it fails to update that row, there's something's gone wrong. We did have a bit of problem with stability, so something's gone wrong. It just sends an email to them just saying, sorry about that, something's gone wrong. We've had a bit of a blip, please try again. It's been used a few times when it's not been able to access that row or that document. So that's the negative branch, if you like. The positive branch. So yep, this person is in this in this rollout. We come down this branch, and we've got a condition, which is really useful in Power Automate. You can just choose a parameter, decide what's going to happen dependent on that parameter. So here I've said if this question, which is please enter a date, is not equal to blank. So as long as they've entered one, it comes down the yes, which is to update a row of the spreadsheet, and it puts their date in that they've requested. If no, it just does nothing. There's nothing in there. I could have chosen to add an action in there, but I didn't. So it comes then out of that and gets the row again. So now that there's that information has been put in, that date, we can run formulas and other macros and whatever you like, same as you would do normally in an Excel spreadsheet, which can sort out information. So what that's actually doing is when you put a date in, it looks down a list, figures out which location and what times that location is available, and puts them against that person's record. So it gets that record, it gets that row, so now it's got all that information that it wants to reply back to the user with. We've then got another condition. So that condition says, as long as this is an and, so and that question there is set to yes, and that please enter the date isn't blank, then it would come down the yes. So this is I've got a date, and it's a valid date. That's actually date valid. That's a formula that checks it in the Excel spreadsheet to make sure that date's a valid one that they've checked and that it's not full. If it's yes, it comes down this row. If it's no, then it goes down that row. So we go down the yes. So we'll say that the date was valid and the person's chosen a date. Then it comes down this row. So it gets there. Now it's a separate spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet that is going to create the user agreement. So it looks in another spreadsheet, gets the name, deletes that out, does the same for their name, their team, and the districts and their email. Deletes what's currently there, puts in the current users, and then there's a delay of 5 seconds just to make sure that's happened okay. It then converts that file into a PDF to the user agreement. It then creates a file for the completed user agreement with the person's name in the title of it. It then creates a second file. This is the transition guide, that's the how-to guide, and then it sends 2 emails. First one is that one that we saw earlier with that chosen date just being plopped in, and the name of the person and the room that's supposed to be going to, all dynamically created. With your device appointment, you can put all this dynamic stuff in there. That email we've seen before, send that one off with the attachment. If you look at the advanced options, you see the attachment there, which is the user guide, which has been attached, which has been created. And the second email, this one here, is that one that we saw, which is the user agreement with in the attachments, the user agreement with that given name and surname. So that's all good, all happened, all happy, everyone's booked in, all good. If this has not worked, so it's not a valid date or they've not entered a date, then it comes down this row. So I've got another condition to figure out which one of those scenarios it is. So is it send me the available dates? If the answer to that question is email me the dates, it goes down the yes. It goes into a spreadsheet, finds the available dates, filters that by what the ones that are not full, creates a HTML table, puts that into an email, and sends that email we've already seen with the output of that HTML. And you've got the no, so they didn't choose to email me the dates, which means that they've entered a date which wasn't valid. So we come down this one, and it sends them an email just saying, I'm afraid the date you've chosen is not valid, please try again. And then it updates a row. It actually just pulls out that date back out again, so that we don't have rubbish dates in. That all looks very complicated, and I've talked a lot, but this is not how it started. My first furore into using Power Automate was you saw Nick show how you can see the data that comes out of forms in Excel through forms. Well, I wanted it in my spreadsheet. I didn't want to use that spreadsheet. I wanted to put it in my spreadsheet so that it was already, I could run macros against it, and I could have it just in my OneDrive, for example. So that's the first thing I did, was to connect the responses. Every time it got a response, it just put a new row into my spreadsheet. And then once I'd got that, I decided to try and tailor the response going back to the person. So I then, it was for the biometrics knowledge check, I wanted to send an email if they passed. So I counted all the answers to see, make sure they passed. If they did, then the automation could have a look in that row, and if it says pass, then it sends an email, and that's literally the first thing I did. So it looks very complicated when you build it up to this sort of thing, but the point is that you can create it as complicated or as simple as you want by dragging and dropping and choosing. If I want to add another email gets sent there, I click the add button, add an action, and tell it what I want to do. So you search connections just by typing email, and you get the options. I want to send an email, click on send an email, and another email will appear in there. I just decide. Okay, so that's it from me. Any questions at all? Happy to take them.
Lovely, Luke. Thank you very much for stepping us through that. Hopefully that made a lot of sense to people and really demonstrated how you can make very practical use of this in a policing setting. Let's do a couple of questions that we've had from the listeners. We'll start off with a really easy one for you, Nick. If you were sending this out to a member of the public, would that person have to be connected to Teams to respond?
No, it's a really good question. So they don't need to be a member of Teams. They don't have any license from Microsoft at all. It's all free. When you send the link out for form, it's just a browser link. So as long as they use any browser at all, they can then connect to that form and complete it. So they don't need any licenses at all.
Fabulous. Right, Luke, you were highlighting there during your demonstration the calendar, and we've got a question from someone who's asking, did you have any issues with the staff that you were sending this out to following your instructions, or did you find that because that calendar popped up, they were just checking a date that suited them rather than one of the options that you gave them?
The quick answer is yes. So people will flick past the instructions and just do whatever they want, but they get an email back saying that's not a valid date. Please try again, click here. And it actually says in that email to click the email me the dates button. So after a couple of times, no interaction from us. When they poke around the dates, they might drop on a good one or they might not, and it's completely up to them. We have no interaction from us.
So that rejection was all automated and it didn't waste your time, which brings me on to another question really around time. So how much has this saved you by adopting this process, and can you give an example of where you did this process before without forms, and
certainly it's quite a significant amount. So we have a team of 4 people in total. One was on long-term sick, so there were 3 of us, and this currently is managed by me. I'm me alone. I'm managing to deal with thousands of people. In the past, we've done this rollouts before for 4,000 people, and it took 3 of us 6 months to arrange who will need to be where when. So that's kind of the time saving. This is, I need to touch it every day just to make sure everything's tickety-boo, but it generally is, and it's one of my tasks rather than 3 people's task for 6 months.
Fabulous. And question from Andy, could this be used in place of a printed letter to a member of the public when requesting information, and he gives the example of if you were requesting data to avoid for a witness, and what format would their responses be received in?
Oh dear, that's a very complicated. We use Pronto, which is to gain that information. With a premium connector, you could look in databases and pull that information out. You could then, I suppose, send off based on some categorization like this, an email to an automated print service. There's probably something there. You could probably do something with it, but off the top of my head, I won't be able to tell you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one then from Joe. Be good to know what the changes are for the Firearms debrief forms.
Certainly. So the debrief form used to be a piece of paper that was filled in by the firearms commander when post-incident, just to standardise that and to have it all searchable and all fielded so that we got the right answers back. We put it into a form that's available on all mobiles. So there's literally a link on every mobile that you click on, and you just fill in the form. It's the same information we used to have on the form. It's just now it's fielded so that we don't get people just putting. We used to get occurrence numbers of star and then 1, 2, 3 because that's what you type into the number, but we don't know what year it is. So we field the data and make sure that they put in the right. Because not showing in that demonstration was you can actually restrict what information goes in. So you can say it's a number between this and this, and so it forces people to put in the right information.
Lovely. We're running out of time, so here's the last one for you. How long approximately did it take to configure this from end to end, including the testing and creating the included material?
It's a really good point because this is ongoing. So this is not the final product, and it's never been the final product. I keep tinkering with it constantly. But the first version of it that went live, I was told on Wednesday afternoon that we needed to start booking people in for delivery on Monday morning, as in they were supposed to get this. First, people were supposed to get the devices on Monday morning. So it actually took me 2 shifts worth, so 16 hours, but they were a little back to back to do this, to set this up to a state where we could put it out. It wasn't perfect, but I got something knocked up within 16 hours, which was usable, and that was figuring out most of this, how to do with it. I'd done not something as complicated as this until that point.
Brilliant, and thank you to Natalie from Lincolnshire Police for that. And let's just end on this comment rather than a question. Comment from Dom from Derbyshire Police, who says, cracking piece of work, Luke. And it absolutely is. Thank you very much. And also thanks very much to Nick for stepping us through the basics there. So as I say, the recording of this session will be available on our website later if you'd like to share it. And don't forget that we're going to return to Tasks and Planner next week. We're just about to put the link once again in the Q&A, so you've got that ready to join us next week. But thanks very much for spending your time with us this Wednesday lunchtime, and I hope you found that useful, and we'll come back and do some more next Wednesday. Goodbye everybody.